Okay, and we are back, and we have something very fun to read. This is a motion hearing from October 18th. This is from the Randall Keith Bean and Heather Antucci Giraffe case. This is the founder of the One People Public Trust thing that's happened in 2012 that promised everybody $10 billion in gold. It blew up. They went to Morocco. They did a bunch of drugs. Yada yada yada. Now they're in jail for laundering money out of a bank, trying to access secret accounts that don't exist, etc. Anyways, they're posting all the transcripts online for free, so we have an incredible amount of free entertainment courtesy of Heather Antucci Giraffe. Okay, so I've highlighted the good parts because the whole thing is 92 pages, and I'm not going to read all of it because I'm not a very good reader. Here we go. Starting on page 12, quote, "You have no document that says judgment on it. Is that correct?" The court is the judge, by the way. "All right, the document you've handed me is entitled in your handwriting, at the top, Declaration of Facts. Is that correct?" Miss Tucci Giraffe: "Yes, that's my own personal copy, so that's my handwriting." And then, "While you've handwritten on all the stuff you've filed in here as well, right?" The court: "All right, it also, the actual form is UCC Financing Statement Amendment, correct?" Tucci: "On that particular document, yes, it's an amendment to the perpetuity." Okay, and is there anything in here? There are copies of that, but is there anything? But there is nothing here that says judgment, correct? No. Inside of there, you will see the word judgment. However, because it goes unrebutted, it stands. The declaration unrebutted stands as law. So here the judge is trying to ask Heather if she actually has a judgment saying that the United States was foreclosed upon. And she keeps dodging the question, saying, well, no, but we have an unrebutted UCC statement. Moving on, the judge: "I understand your legal theory." Tucci: "It is not a theory, it's a law and maxim of law." The judge: "Okay, we'll go ahead and get to that. If you'll hand this back, the court will make note that there is no judgment in the stack of papers that she gave me. Now, on page 2 of your filings for Precipe, you do list a group of maxims of law." Heather: "Maxims of law?" The judge: "Yes, right. I thought you said maximums." The court: "Maxims of law. Yes. And where is the legal support for those maxims? Such as, like, where do you get them? Being born from fraud? Where did you get them from? It's universal." "You just made them up?" "No. Where did you get them?" asked the judge. "They're universally accepted, like nothing can be born from a fraud. That's something we've used when I was working as a prosecutor for the government. Nothing could be born from a fraud." The court: "Well, you said, quote, a declaration unrebutted stands as law. Where did you get that?" Heather: "A declaration unrebutted, those are in almost every court rulebook." The judge: "I couldn't find it anywhere. Where would you find it?" Miss Tucci Giraffe: "I'm not sure about Tennessee. I haven't gone." The judge: "Where would you find it anywhere? In Washington?" Miss Tucci Giraffe: "That declaration stands unrebutted. Yeah, that would be in the court rules typically of any state." Okay, do you know where? Now this is Heather's response to this. "I do not know where in the Tennessee. However, the rules, that's part of the thing is, with the Declaration of Facts, the actual judgment that was perfected in 2012, it was never rebutted. There was foreclosure and a termination, which also means all the policy statutes and codes belonging to that particular entity also is unenforceable. They do not exist." The judge: "We're not talking about that. We're just talking about maxims of law." Heather: "Okay. Maxim of law is that which is universally accepted and known to be true. The judge, again, I'm just asking where you got these. You have submitted them, and I ask you. Heather, they are universal maxims that I have learned and been trained with in law school, as well as in my time as attorney working for the government, as well as privately working as an attorney, and then also as a lawyer after I canceled my bar license and no longer was a licensed attorney or an attorney. By the way, the wording of that sentence is incredible. She goes from an attorney to a lawyer to attorney to a licensed attorney. Okay, anyways. The judge. Okay, so what I'm hearing is, even though it's universal, it's everywhere, you know all about it, there's nowhere I could go and find these. Miss Sushi Giraffe, I'm sure that we could spend some time and look for them if you would like. If you want a specific reference, although I assumed everyone here sitting as an attorney or in the seat they're presumed to know the law. So as far as the universal maxims, such as nothing can be born from a fraud. So right off the bat, strike number one, she can't find any support for the maxims of law that she is basing her entire theory that led to the collapse of the United States government and all world governments and all world corporations. Now this is where the judge lays the smackdown. Quote, well, first off, we can dispense with that. Filing a UCC financing statement does not translate into a judgment. Number one, that is contrary to the law. Number two, a UCC financing statement doesn't even have that potential. And number three, you have absolutely no legal basis for claiming it. So three big problems that the judge identifies with Heather's theory of foreclosing on the government. Number one, a UCC financing statement is not a judgment. I'm just restating what the judge has explained here. Number two, a UCC financing statement can never become a judgment. And number three, Heather has nothing to support her theory that you can use a UCC financing statement as a judgment. Now, here the judge makes an incredible attempt at using logic to try to explain to Heather why her theories and precision are wrong. So here, quote, Heather, my declaration, not position, I corrected it to declaration, is everybody on this planet has been taken out of the employment and the citizenship of or the ownership of private corporations operating under the guise of government. Alright, so the judge responds, okay, so if I understand that right, then anybody could commit a federal crime and we would not be able to prosecute them, correct? Heather, again, these are all goes to legal advice, which you and I personally agreed I would not go into. That is such an incredible dodge by Heather to not answer the hypothetical question. Because the judge's point here is dead right. If Heather's theories are correct, anybody in the United States could commit any federal crime. They could bomb a building. They could, I don't know, what other federal crimes are there? Whatever, murder, and they could not be prosecuted. Continuing on. The judge, I'm not asking you for your legal advice. I'm asking you, is that part of your position? Because I'm trying to figure out how it works. So if it works as you, and if it works as to everyone, Heather responds, this court is a bank. It's just a bank teller, okay? Court, okay. Ms. Sushi Giraffe, this court operates as a banking function. The judge, that's my position. If this court is just a bank teller, if this court has no jurisdiction, if this court doesn't exist, if this court has been foreclosed on, if all those things are true, then there is no authority in this court to sit in judgment of anybody who commits any criminal offense, correct? Heather responds, every criminal offense that used to be in the United States Code, is in the United States Code, which used to be unenforceable, Right. So Heather puts it in plain English, according to her, no law in the United States Code is enforceable as far as she's concerned. That would include treason, murder, terrorism, bombing. I don't know all the crimes in the United States Code or whatever. The judge continues. In your world, in your idea of how this works, because you think there is no U.S., and I think there is, so in your declaration, in your position, in your theory, and your whatever you want to call it, if somebody were to rob a bank, okay, could they be prosecuted in court by a prosecutor like these young ladies, or by a court like myself or Judge Varlin? Heather, if there is authority to do so, then of course. The judge, which is, again, she's dodging the question. The judge, is there authority? I thought you said there was no such authority. Judge continues, in the name of trying not to commit more fraud, I take it your position then is, if somebody robs a bank today and they come in here, I should just tell them I have no authority over them, I don't exist, and they should just go home. He'll respond, I'm not going to give you any legal advice of how you should conduct your affairs today. The judge continues, I mean, that would be the ultimate result of what you're proposing. And here is a point at which the judge realizes that Heather is not going to answer any questions. She's not going to use the brain cells in her head to try and reason out what the stuff she's saying makes no sense. Quote, the judge, I was hoping that at some point in our discussion you could see the fallacy in your argument, or at least your supporters could. That's important because the judge has clearly done his homework, and he knows that the people who follow Heather and are attempting to access these secret accounts that don't exist are reading the transcripts, and so this has a dual purpose. The judge is trying to explain to Heather why she's wrong, and the judge is also trying to explain to the audience, to the American public, why Heather is wrong, to prevent more people from going to jail. Now, laughably, Heather responds, well, I hope that you see the fallacy in your hypothetical. The judge continues, but that is the long and short of it. That is the long and short of your proposition, that people could just go out today and commit any kinds of crimes, and there would be no way to prosecute them or to bring them to justice, because by virtue of your foreclosure in your own argument, by virtue of that, we no longer have any authority. We don't exist legally, and we can do nothing with them. Ms. Tushy Giraffe actually agrees with his point. Legally, no, nobody. The judge continues, okay, that's my point. The court, the judge continues, the essence for this, if I understand it, is that you contend that the United States was formerly declared a corporation. Heather responds, formerly, it's Anne-Marie Svalto and Cynthia Davidson, those are the prosecutors that said that, and the alleged court clerk's record says USA is the plaintiff. The judge explains, you said the United States was formerly declared a corporation at 18 U.S.C. 3002 section 15, or whatever. Subsection 15, I think, yes. The judge, that's Heather responds, that was the most recent citing of. The judge responds, that's the only thing you wrote, correct? Tucci responds, The judge explains, you understand, don't you, that site is just a definitional site under the Federal Debt Collection Procedure Act, don't you? Heather responds, I am very aware of the United States being a corporation after, quote, working at the highest levels of bank trade and finance, and that it is actually a corporation that had been operating in fraud. Now, by the way, Heather has never provided any evidence that she ever worked at the highest levels of bank trade and finance. In fact, there's nothing in the public record that would support that statement, but she keeps saying that she worked at the highest levels of bank trade and finance, which is bullshit. Anyways, the judge response, no ma'am, it is not. In other words, it is not a corporation, and your only reference to it does not even say that it's a corporation, does it? Continuing on. Judge, well, in your mind, I appreciate that you feel that way. What I'm asking you is, the legal site that you filed doesn't support what you claim, correct? Heather starts to get confused because she's starting to realize that what she's saying doesn't make sense. How does it not support? It was a corporation operating under the guise of government, and it was a bankrupt corporation. The judge restates his explanation. It doesn't say that at 18 U.S.C. section 3002 subsection 15, does it? Tucci responds, that's for the Fair Debt and Practices Act, correct? Yeah. Continuing. And so the judge sums it up. And I guess the long and short of it is, simply just because you say so, simply just because you say it so doesn't make it so. And that's true with everyone. Yes, responds Heather. In other words, if I were to issue a declaration saying that, you owed me some money and you didn't, quote, rebut it within the time I said it, doesn't mean you owe it to me. This is here the judge explaining why unrebutted affidavits are in judgment. Heather responds, well, if you gave me a notice that I owed it to you, I would actually absolutely rebut it, because if I don't owe it to you, I don't owe it to you. The judge continues, trying to explain his point. But if you didn't rebut it, you still wouldn't owe it to me. Tucci responds, well, if you gave me notice of it, the judge continues, so if I just made it up out of whole cloth and I just said, you owe me $1 million, and for some reason you didn't rebut it, suddenly you owe me $1 million, even though Heather responds, that would never happen. There was no basis for the debt. That's the judge continuing his sentence. Heather responds, that would never happen. I would rebut it. The judge tries to get through to her. Judge, what I'm trying to show you is the fallacy of the argument. Anyways, moving on. Heather, there is a contrite ignorance from the moment that we go to law school as far as what the law is. A true bill, for example, can only be issued by the original issuer. Now, I'm pretty sure she got that from Winston Shroud, because I've heard him say that. Anyways, so for instance, there is an ignorance not just within this court, but within the whole entire legal industry everywhere that someone else can actually charge me or do a true bill against me. To restate that, Heather is saying that it's false that a grand jury cannot indict you or charge you with a crime. The court, so no one, Heather continues, or anybody, the court. Excuse me, let me see if I understand that, because I've never heard of that law. Heather responds, it's not a law, it's a matter of fact as far as what paperwork goes from this court through the clerk's office. The court, no, you said no one can issue a true bill against you except who, yourself? I mean, seriously, think about what that means. Heather could, murder somebody on the street, and the only one that could issue a true bill indictment against Heather would be herself. And if she chooses not to indict herself for murder, she could get away with it. Moving on to page 43. Or it was, this is Heather speaking, that was what was terminated and closed. Are you in receipt of the Declaration of Statement of Assessments? That's document 55. The judge, and you can feel the sarcasm in this one. Is that the one where you claim some people in this court system, maybe me included, owe you 46 quintillion? In this two-sheet giraffe. Oh, I see where no, this is not you directly. Oh, good, says the judge. Or to anyone here, good. Heather continued. This is the amount that is running, and actually since 901, it's been doubled and compounded. So, the judge. So, we're up to 92 quintillion. I probably don't have that. Tushi can do. Well, this has to do with the Federal Reserve and Bank for International, the court. They probably don't have that either. Tushi, they don't. They're trying to create it like mad. That's what September 15th was about. Well, let's move on. I switched my hand to. There we go. Let's move on. Where were we? Let's move on a sec. As long as you are noticed that this is existing, you've received it. Has Anne-Marie, and this is the important paragraph here because the judge starts warning Heather. Quote, I just tell you to be careful. I just tell you to be careful about some of your filings, and Mr. Lloyd can advise you of that you know. There's other statutes that's obviously you will not agree exist. But unfortunately, the rest of the country and this court and the prosecution, prosecutors, and the marshals, and ultimately the Bureau of Prisons will deem exist that make it a crime to file certain things against judges. So here the judge is warning Heather not to file any liens against the judge. Oh, the judge continues, false filings. So just, all I'm saying is just be careful. Moving on. The judge. And I understand that you're filing, this is referring to the 2012 filings. I understand that your filings, this is where it shows that the judge has been doing his research on Heather and the OPPT. And I understand that your filing said that each person was entitled to $6 billion as a result of that filing. Is that right? Heather responded, no, it's not. Judge responds, it's not? No, it's stated incorrectly, says Heather. Oh. Heather explains, everyone's state of body, which would be their bodies, and those are under the ownership and care of each individual. As far as the $5 billion, according to the commercial bill and the true bill, there is $5 billion in pre-19, Heather continues, pre-1933 gold and silver, which is the lawful money, or was the lawful money of the United States. And that's what was duly secured, registered, and noticed. Judge asked, so what? Heather continues. So it's actually $10 billion for every prejudice since March 13th, 2013. March 18th, 2013. Every prejudice done towards you, towards anyone that includes having you sit on a bench, serving a private interest other than doing the job that you truly have believed that you've been doing this entire time. It's $10 billion ledgered each time, which is why the economies are in the state they're in. They are. It's actually ledgered through BIS. Judge, okay, so every one of us in this courtroom is entitled to $10 billion. Heather responds, I'm not sure what your accounts are at this time, like I gave you. Heather continues, everything is ledgered over to BIS. So yes, I was actually given until I was threatened and said that I could only use mine and a small group of my friends. I wonder who actually told her that. But they didn't want the word out to anybody else because too many people were. The judge asked, so you've gotten yours, but nobody else can get. Heather responds, no, I rejected everything. Judge responds, we don't. Heather continues, I rejected everything. If everyone is to have access to their accounts, you have accounts. The judge, making fun of her, that was magnanimous of you to give up your $5 billion because everybody else couldn't get it, huh? Heather responds, I have much more. Those are ledgered accounts. And I know that you are making fun of things right now, but I'm being very, very serious now, and I have spent 20 years of my life to make sure the fraud and slavery stopped. The judge, I was interested to see if there was anything to your argument, and that's why I asked you the 40 questions before this. Heather, I don't have an argument. The judge, because once you, Heather responds, I have a declaration. The judge continues, once you have no concept of the law in my mind, then all this other stuff has no moment and no merit. I wanted to see if you would agree with the basic principles of law in the statute and the Constitution, and if you did, and then I would have to say, wow, maybe I ought to look at this. But once I heard you say that, all the things you said, it pretty well confirmed to me, and here's why. Heather interrupts him. I'm sorry I didn't understand it last week. Could you please repeat it? Judge, no, let me ask you this. Maybe this will help you. Did you study the UCC in law school? Tucci responds, yes, I did. The judge. And you are aware then that the UCC is not a law. This is going to be news to the OPPT followers. Anyways, Heather responds, the UCC, as I stated earlier, the United States Commercial Code. Judge responds, right. Heather, it's just a regulation of uniform registration system, a notification. That is what it is. The judge responds, my point is, it doesn't exist. You understand that? Heather responds, the United States Commercial Code does not exist. The court, it's not called the United States Commercial Code, is it? Heather responds, the UCC that you're referring to, the notification system? The judge, right. Heather, or the actual regulations, which one are you speaking of? The judge, I'm talking about the UCC that you have referenced throughout every document that you have filed. You are aware that it is not a law. The UCC is a group of people who got together and put together a proposed set of uniform laws that the various states of the United States might choose to adopt so that we might have some uniformity between the states. That's what the judge is referring to over here when he says it's not called the United States Commercial Code. It's actually the Uniform Commercial Code. The U stands for uniform. And each state, like Tennessee, adopts its own version of the UCC and changes whatever terms it wants to, so that each state has its own version of the UCC. But there is no law called the UCC. Heather responds, I'm aware of that. Court, okay, so Heather responds, UCC is a notification system or was a notification system. The judge continues, no, each state has a version of the UCC. Well, correct. There is no UCC notification system, is there? Heather responds, then what are the actual filings that they are doing? That is them filing whatever property or claims that they believe that they have or positions that they have. It is or was a notification system. Each state, I agree with you, each state had its own versions that they've adopted and that they used. Judge says, okay. Heather responds, that is absolutely correct too. The judge then continues, so what you just referenced, the UCC and the number, like UCC 301, there is no such thing. There's a proposal for Section 301, but there's no law. There's no UCC 301, is there? Heather, he responds, there's going to be a lot of bankers that are going to be very upset to hear that because everything that you guys do is entered into the UCC. The judge responds, nothing I do, ma'am. No, ma'am. Nothing I do is entered into the UCC. Nothing, because it doesn't exist. If you would cite me, Heather, if you would cite me continuing to a statute where it exists, I will look it up and we will show everybody. The judge continues, you just made this stuff up. There is no UCC 301. Heather in denial continues, no, I didn't make it up. The judge continues to hammer the point home. There is no UCC 103. Is there? Heather responds, I did not make anything up. These are actually common law principles. The judge, so here we have the Tennessee version of the commercial transactions. And there's a 47-3-301 because that's how Tennessee chose to codify it. The judge continues, your whole basis, my point is, you understand they're all different. And the whole basis, like I'm looking at your financing statement. Now we get to the indictments. This is a good part. Now, you filed copies of the indictment and copies of the government's response to those. And you marked all over those that they were basically void. Is that right? And that you, Heather asked, which document are you referring to? Judge, to you, let's see, what are those documents? 48, I think, 49, and 53. Do you recognize that? You came and filed those the other day, and if you look up here, I've got 48, says Heather, and you just said that the indictment is duly canceled and void. Is that right? Heather says, okay, I have document. The court, I'm asking you about document 48, the indictment in this case. Heather says, yes, I have documents 48 and 58. Judge asks, okay, and you just marked across them the indictment void and duly canceled. Heather answers, yes, I took a certified copy out from the clerks because they have the original, so I took it out. They would not give me a redacted, or excuse me, the unredacted. The judge, and is it your position that because you marked on that and put your fingerprint on it, that makes the indictment void? Heather actually responds, yes, it is my understanding from charging my history of charging documents, as well as in the highest levels of bank, trade, and finance. She loves that phrase, by the way, highest levels of bank, trade, and finance, where we receive the actual documentations for monetization. For the monetization, which this is the only way, only the true original issuer can actually cancel something. Same as if I write a check, I'm the only one that can actually cancel it. So when I was taken on the 25th, the judge asked, who's the original issuer of the indictments? Heather responds, I am the original issuer of the indictments. And the judge, I'm guessing, had to laugh at that point, because there's no way he could have heard that and kept a straight face. The judge's response to that is, you issued this indictment against yourself. I mean, that's what her point boils down to, that she indicted herself. That's what she apparently believes. Anyways, Randall's talks. Randall, if I may ask a question, yes. Bean, you referenced on August 29th and referenced back on August 29th, you specifically asked me if I thought I was God in the courtroom. Judge said, right, because you said you were the source of all that is. Bean, my question to you is, what gives you authority in this situation if you aren't God? The judge asked, is it your position that a judge does not have authority over you when you are alleged to have committed a crime? Bean continues, we've asked for proof of who you are. Bean, that's all we're asking for. The judge responds, all right, and so if I showed you my appointment as a United States magistrate judge, would that suffice for you? Bean, it would be for my review and also for Miss Sushi Giraffe. Well, would that suffice because that's what I have? Well, we would review it and then our answer would be. Judge again asks, would that suffice for you? Well, I would also need. The judge asks, if I saw your diploma. Tushi, it would only be one part of the documentation that's required amongst the rest. I would need proof. The judge asks, what's the rest? I would need proof that the United States actually and is lawful and validated. The only one that can actually do that is the court. I can't prove that, can I? Because they don't, under your theory, as of March 13th, 2013, they don't exist. So how could I prove that? Heather, are you claiming that you work for the United States? The judge, yes, I work for the United States courts. Heather, okay, wouldn't the United States courts, the United States itself, wouldn't the documentation be available to you? I mean, it's the same as working for an employer. Wouldn't they have their articles of incorporation? Wouldn't they have their board resolution giving you your authority? That's the stuff I'm looking for. And here the judge actually tries to explain to Heather where he gets his authority from. The judge, I do, and I've told you, it's in the United States Constitution, which gives the Congress the authority to set up the courts. I gave you a statute in which Congress took that authority and set up the court. It specifically sets up this court and allows for judges like myself. And so that's our authority. So the judge draws a straight line from the Constitution right down to where he gets his authority from. Heather's response, okay, so then all you would need is a declaration from the judge. Response, I don't need to give you a declaration, that's the law. Heather responds, no, what I'm saying is, for Jeff Sessions, who is the one that, what does Jeff Sessions have to do? Who is the one that actually set up these courts? What, Jeff Sessions set these courts up? And DOJ, everyone's underneath him, correct? He would just have to validate and verify your appointment. The judge, he doesn't set up this court. He doesn't give you my authority. Heather, okay, whoever gives you your authority, that's who we would need, and then we need identification of that and their authority. She also wants the authority of the guy that gave him authority. Anyways, moving on. Moving on. Here we go. The judge, I'm saying I showed you where my authority came from. It comes from the law. It comes from the Constitution of the United States. It comes from the congressional acts and the law of the United States. And your response was, those don't exist. So we're very simple. I say my law emanates, my jurisdiction and authority emanates from the law. And you say the law doesn't exist. And you say that based on a filing in which you claim that the law supports you. So that's where we're going to have a problem. The judge continues. No, ma'am, but see, that's where you're wrong. You just make up legal stuff. There's no presumption. Continue. You just wrote on it, duly rejected for cause. That doesn't mean it's rejected. You can reject it, and you did, and that's fine. You can throw it in the trash. You can put it in a paper shredder. You can do whatever you want with it. I, on the other hand, and this court accepted it, have read it, and pretty much agree with it. Because it sets out our authority for courts, and it sets it out. It sets out the jurisdiction. You just, quote, duly rejected it. She set it out, so you asked me. You asked me to give you stuff, and what you will do is duly reject it, which means nothing. It's legal mumbo-jumbo. The response, it is not. The judge, it doesn't exist in the law, and you know that because you're a lawyer. There is no way a criminal defendant charged with a criminal defense in this court or any other court can walk in and write duly rejected and void on that indictment and walk away from the crime. But, Heather responds, actually I do, 100%. No, that's actually how it functions as far as the things you sent up to the Federal Reserve clerks. The judge, I sent nothing to the Federal Reserve. To Heather, you don't, but the court clerk does. The judge, no, she doesn't. Heather, the clerk of the court sends it out, and J.P. Morgan actually monetizes it. What I'm telling you is, you can present me anything you want all day long. The judge, but I'm saying, continue on. Okay, here's where we have the biggest problem. Two things. Number one, so many of the facts you alleged are utter falsehoods. They're completely not true. That's number one. Heather asked, which ones? I'm sorry. The judge, when you said I reported to the Federal Reserve Bank. Heather, I didn't say you. I said all the documents from the clerk of court. The judge, yeah. Where do you think that goes? The judge, they don't go to any bank. Tushi, who do they go to? I know where they go. Okay, number two, I think I'm now getting where our real disconnect is. You want all of us to submit all this authorization, validation, everything, because you think that you have to consent to being prosecuted. And unless we show you our authority, validation, justification, identification, you aren't in a position to consent. The point is you don't get to consent. Heather asks, under what authority? Court. Most criminal defendants are in here against their consent. They don't want to be prosecuted and they don't want to go to prison. Her response, well, that's where the disconnect has been illegal. That's the problem Heather has with the legal system. That murderers are being put in jail against their consent. Anyway, the judge continues, right, is that there is no consent, and people, when they do say that they cancel any consent, that's manufactured. The judge, that's my point, that your arguments, Heather responds, we're sending people to jail that haven't consented. The court, can I finish? Your argument would mean, for everybody out there, I can go rob a bank, I can go assault anybody, I can break in Mr. F's house, take all your belongings, and simply say to the police, you don't have any authority, and you can't take me to court because I don't consent. And Miss Prosecutor, you can't prosecute me. And Mr. Judge, you can't sentence me because I don't consent. I'm going to go back out and do more of it because I don't consent. And if you file anything, I will write duly rejected, and then you have to let me go. Heather, no, that's not what I'm saying. The judge, that is exactly what you're saying. And the judge is right. That is exactly what Heather's argument and most sovereign citizen arguments boil down to. Anyways, and now here we get to the state's response. Judge, all right, Ms. Volto. I'm guessing that's how that's pronounced. What's the government's response? Ms. Volto, we'll rely primarily on our written response, but I'm not sure there's anything I can tell Your Honor or Mr. Raff or Mr. Bean that will change anyone's minds here. The court here has to find that it has personal jurisdiction over the defendants and subject matter jurisdiction over the defendants. It unquestionably has both. The United States Code 18 U.S.C. Section 3231 that Your Honor referenced earlier gave this court subject matter jurisdiction over matters involving crime against the United States. It's kind of boring. It is not in dispute that the defendants were charged by a grand jury for crimes against the United States. So the court, therefore, under the valid United States Code, has the subject matter jurisdiction over the criminal case. And the court has personal jurisdiction over each of the defendants because they have been charged with a criminal offense. The fact that they were brought here forcibly and without consent does not deprive the court of personal jurisdiction. As Your Honor has noted, criminal defendants do not have to agree to be prosecuted. I mean, really, I'm amazed that a prosecutor actually had to state this in court. A criminal defendant does not have to agree to be prosecuted. Imagine that. Imagine if O.J. Simpson had to agree to be prosecuted for murder. Anyways, and this court does not have to find that they consent to being prosecuted in order to have personal jurisdiction over the defendants. So the court certainly has personal jurisdiction over Mr. Bean and Ms. Tushy Giraffe. With respect to UCC filings, those have no legal consequence. It appears that the defendants are arguing that there was some sort of default judgment issued against the United States that put the United States in foreclosure or that put the United States in some sort of default. And then they filed the UCC statement saying that. The UCC statement itself has no legal relevance over the jurisdiction of the case. It doesn't appear to be based on an actual judgment anywhere. The fact that it states a declaration of judgment doesn't make it a declaration of judgment. It doesn't mean that there was a default judgment. Whether notice of the foreclosure was ever sent to the United States Secretary of State or anyone else does not make the UCC filing statement a valid and enforceable judgment in any way. And because the UCC statement is merely a typical UCC filing statement is merely used to perfect a security lien. The security interest and lien would have to be based on a valid judgment, and no valid judgment against the United States exists here. So the UCC filing statement are of no consequences to the finding of jurisdiction. With respect to the court and the United States having to prove their authority, the court is under no obligation to do so, neither is the United States. If the court has any obligation with respect to the defendant's argument in the matter, it's to tell them that they're wrong, so there is no obligation to prove that Your Honor is an authorized judge. The jurisdiction lies in the statutes. The jurisdiction lies in the statutes we've presented, and that is all that is of consequence here. The 6th Circuit, the 7th Circuit have all addressed this. These types of arguments where the court does not have jurisdiction over someone who's essentially claiming to be a sovereign citizen are meritless, and there is no need to consent to jurisdiction, but that the court must find personal subject matter jurisdiction. Both of these exist here, and that's the position of the United States. So if there are no questions, the court. So you are familiar with the United States v. Pryor. Yes, and did the 6th Circuit hold that courts much like this one, including this one, have both subject matter and in persona jurisdiction in criminal prosecutions? Judge, yes. The prosecutor said yes. Judge, did the Supreme Court deny cert in that? Judge, yes, that cert was denied last year. The case came out in 2015 or 2016. The judge, and is it your understanding that it's my duty to follow the law of the 6th Circuit? Prosecution, yes it is. Judge, okay, thank you. Prosecutor, thank you, all right. Mr. Aff responds to that. Are you familiar with the Pryor case? U.S. v. Pryor. I can give you the site if you'd like. Heather, no, I'm familiar with all that. Moving on, I have a response to, she talked about sovereign citizen, the Constitution as well was brought in because she declared that she's relying on her written statements. Correct? Yes, but. So as far as a sovereign citizen, I canceled that. That's an oxymoron to begin with. So she's falling for the sovereign citizen. It's an oxymoron meme that's popular on the internet. The court, you're not a citizen. Heather continues, or a sovereign. Sovereigns require someone underneath you to rule so that you can rule them. I'm not a sovereign. I'm not a sovereign citizen. I don't even know what that means. I'm not a constitutionalist. Or she even limited me to being I, myself, and Mr. Randall being human. What is it? Bled, and let me refer to that. She limited me to being a human being. What's wrong with being a human being? Well, anyway. However, as far as her reference right now to a sovereign citizen, there's no way I can be a sovereign citizen. It's an oxymoron, just as in the actual phrase, sovereign citizen. And that's it. So this is a culmination of 5 years since the UCC filings in 2012 that started the whole OPPT movement. We finally have it in black and white, a judge and a prosecutor explaining in extreme detail why you cannot foreclose on the United States or all the world's governments through a UCC filing statement. So this is one of the best smackdowns I've ever seen of a sovereign citizen in court. And I wish we had audio of this, but unfortunately we do not. So looking forward to the trial, and hopefully there's a guilty finding and Heather gets some jail time. Hopefully that dissuades people from trying to access money from accounts that do not exist. Please do not do that. It's illegal. You'll end up in jail with Heather and Randall. And jail is a boring place. They don't have Wi-Fi. They don't let you bring your cell phone in. You can't play Candy Crush or whatever kids play now. You'll just be bored in there reading. I think they have books though. So, but anyway, look, if you want to read a book, don't go to jail. Go to the library. You can do it. You can read it comfortably at home on your couch.